Hi, I recently found this really great article on Michael Jordan, and I was reading it, and as I was reading it, I noticed something pretty profound, and I realized why Michael Jordan made The Last Dance. So let me get into it for just a quick moment. Entitled Michael Jordan Has Not Left the Building. And it's an old ESPN article, Outside the Lines. I'll leave a link in the comment section for those who want to read it. So basically, it's an article about Michael Jordan. He's turning 50. So this is written around 2013. Yeah, 2013. Uh, so you have a lot of well, let me get to the part in it that I found the most interesting. Because as I was reading it, you understand exactly why he's the guy he is in The Last Dance. It's a really good um, uh, preview to the guy we knew in The Last Dance that we actually saw. And that's actually Michael Jordan. But let me get to my favorite part of the article. Okay, all right. So this is the reflective part of the article, and where Michael Jordan realized something profound, and it ties in with basketball because it was basically the impetus for The Last Dance. So I'm gonna read it. Let me see if I need to zoom in. Well, I think I'll just read it. Over the next several hours, all of it spent watching one basketball game after another, he's again pulled inward on a tilt-a-whirl of emotion, mostly shades of anger from active screaming to a slow, silent burn. He transforms from a businessman returning from the office, honey, I'm home, to a man on fire. The first sparks come from a sports center debate, one of those impossible, vaguely ridiculous arguments that can, of course, never be won. Who's the better quarterback, Joe Montana or Tom Brady? Michael Jordan says, I can't wait to hear this conversation, he says. He stretches out his legs out on the ottoman, wearing sweats and socks, and as one of the guys on television argues for Brady, Jordan laughs. They're going to say Brady because they don't remember Montana, he says. Isn't that amazing? Then the article goes in to aging means losing things. And that's true. People die off that you love, old memories fade away, friendships that you had for many years leave, but Father Time is undefeated. So when the article's writer starts, aging means losing things, and not just eyesight and flexibility. It means watching your own accomplishments of your youth be diminished, maybe in your own eyes through perspective, maybe in the eyes of others through cultural amnesia. And that is one of the biggest criticisms I have about modern sports journalism is that the it's gone from recency bias in the 2010s to full-blown iconoclasm in the 2020s. We are now trying to tear down the legacy of Michael Jordan to prop up the next guy. So let me continue. Most people live anonymous lives, and when they grow old and die, any record of their existence is blown away. They're forgotten, some more slowly than others, but eventually it happens to virtually everyone. Yet for the few people in each generation who reach the very pinnacle of fame and achievement, a mirage flickers, immortality. They come to believe in it. Even after Jordan is gone, he knows people will remember him. Here lies the greatest basketball player of all time. That's his epitaph. When he walked off the court for the last time, he must have believed that nothing could ever diminish what he's done. That knowledge would be his shield against aging. There's a fable about a returning Roman general who rode in victory parades through the streets of the capital. A slave stood behind him, whispering in his ears, "All glory is fleeting." Nobody does that for professional athletes. Jordan couldn't have known that the closest he'd get to immortality was during that final walk off the court, the one symbolically preserved in the print in his office. All that can happen in the days and years that follow. Now, pay close attention to this. I'm going to repeat this. All that can happen in the days and years that follow is for the shining monument he built to be chipped away, eroded. Maybe he realizes that now. Maybe he doesn't. But when he sees Joe Montana joined on the mountaintop by the next generation, he has to realize that someday his picture will be on a screen next to LeBron James as people argue who was better. What's happening right now? Exactly my point. The debaters announced the results of an internet poll, and 925,000 people voted. There was a tie. 50% said Montana and 50% said Brady. It doesn't matter that Montana never lost a Super Bowl, like Jordan, or that, unlike Brady, he never faded on the biggest stage. Jordan didn't fade on the biggest stage either. This is why I have Joe Montana and Michael Jordan at their two very different people, but two very similar competitors. So let me just go back. It doesn't matter that Montana never lost a Super Bowl, or that, unlike Brady, he never faded on the biggest stage. Questions of legacy, of greatness, are weighed in favor of youth. Time itself is on Brady's side for now. Jordan shakes his head. That doesn't make any sense, he says. Now, in retrospect, we all know why it makes sense. Because every generation has to have its own star in order to maintain the continuity of earned income, of generating revenue. So when you've got Jordan, the thread that is really trying to be pushed is it went from Jordan to LeBron. Like it went from, like people are saying, Tom surpassed Joe. Now, Tom clearly has more rings. Obviously, Bill Russell has more rings than Michael Jordan. It doesn't, but we don't call Bill Russell the GOAT. We call Michael Jordan the GOAT. Michael Jordan even said something to the effect of, there's something about 4-0 or 6-0 that sounds better than 4-6 or something along those lines. Clearly, Brady is nowhere near the level of immature adolescent, in my opinion, manufactured athlete that LeBron James is. Tom Brady is a killer himself, and I can't knock his greatness. I got to see it, but he'll never touch Joe Montana. Joe Montana in 4 different Super Bowl games, won them all. The path to the Super Bowl was the hardest path in the hardest, probably most violent era of football ever, the 1980s. In the NFC, basically what Jordan had to go through to get to the finals in the Eastern Conference since he was drafted is basically akin to what Joe Montana and the 49ers had to go through in their conference to get to the Super Bowl. Jordan faced the Celtics, the Pistons, those two gargantuan obstacles to get to the finals. Everybody remembers the '86 Pistons and I mean, not the '86 Pistons, the '86 Celtics and the Boston Pit. Oh my God. Everybody remembers the '86 Boston Celtics and the Bad Boy Pistons for their defense. What Montana had to deal with as far as defense was the New York Giants with Lawrence Taylor and Bill Belichick as the defensive coordinator. He had to deal with the '85 Bears and that in that great, just destroying defense. He had to go through the uh, Eagles with Reggie White and coached by Buddy Ryan with the '46 defense. And he had to go through Washington with the Hogs and Dexter Manley and some of these great Joe Gibb teams that had just smash mouth defense. So when we're evaluating greatness, we have to remember a couple things that stand out. And it's not just appearances. It's what how hard of an obstacle did you have to go did you what how hard of a path did you have to go through in order to climb to the top of the mountain and win the brass ring or the Super Bowl trophy? And obviously in Michael Jordan's case it's the finals trophy. So Michael Jordan went through a much tougher road to his glory than the manufactured superstar that had to go to that chose to go to another team only to have it blow up in his face. This is where I separate LeBron from Brady. Brady is a legit champion. I can point out flaws. I can point out some. I mean, Joe Montana's. There was never any controversies, never any stuff about filming practices or any kind of things in the league that would lead one to believe that the 49ers dynasty, the team of the '80s, had any fraudulency. No, that was all 24 karat gold. Brady had Spygate, Deflategate, um, and I, regardless of whether you want to say it or not, he did bring a super team along with him when he won his seventh Super Bowl. But what makes what separates Brady from LeBron, in my opinion, is Brady is a killer. Michael is a killer. Joe is a killer. Uh, LeBron is not. Uh, he's when we have the fight or flight reaction, we either are runners and we run for our lives, or we stand and we fight to kill to survive. 3 out of the 4 people mentioned are fighters. The one that the, the other one is a he flies, he runs away from his problems. So this is why I can't knock Brady because he was able to go to another conference. He did bring along Antonio Brown and Robert Gronkowski, but he was able to go to another conference in his first year with a very good team, bringing all that talent, and went and proved a point. And this is the wonderful thing that Brady accomplished by doing that. He basically cemented his legacy by never losing to Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. That's that will that is something Brady will always have over Mahomes. What Montana has over Brady is perfection. At at the more intense the pressure, on the biggest stage, the brighter the lights, whatever you want to call it, the better he was. Brady has, I mean, Eli Manning is going to be a Hall of Famer because of Tom Brady, because of his 2 wins on the biggest stage against the greatest quarterback. Whether you want to debate it or not, are are people have kind of made up their minds in the cultural zeitgeist that Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. So that to get back to my point, this was the article that made me think, oh, this is why he made the last dance. He did Jordan wanted to control how his legacy would be dictated, and he would dictate it himself. In a similar situation, Montana, like a year or 2 later, released his own docu-series called Cool Under Pressure, which, uh, while not as like um, as not as epic as The Last Dance was, is still a very good documentary, and it highlights uh, all of the adversity Joe Montana had to go through to get his accolades. Just like The Last Dance showed how Jordan went through his obstacles to get his accolades. And at the end of the day, what I take away most importantly from this is the media will always replace you. They'll always no, they'll always find a way to diminish your achievements so that they can continue to have extraordinary revenue by comparing their current best star to the greatest star in order to both bring the conversation from both sides together and actually create more synergy in amongst that. The more you associate Joe Montana with Tom Brady or Tom Brady with Joe Montana, the closer they are in uh, in people's perception as the best of the best. So when Tom Brady gets his fifth ring, everybody is, obviously anointing Brady. Michael Jordan sees this. He sees LeBron James on the come up, and he's hearing the radio announcers say something that I also find extraordinary. We're going to veer into basketball for just a quick second. Jordan plays his new favorite trivia game, asking which current players could be nearly as successful in his era. Our era, he says over and over again, calling modern players soft, coddled, and ill-prepared for the highest level of the game. This is personal to him, since he'll be compared to this generation, and since he has to build a franchise with these generation's players. I'll give you a hint, he says. I can only come up with four. He lists them. LeBron, Kobe, Tim Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki. As he's making his point, Yvette, his wife, walks into the room and in a tone of voice familiar to every husband who argues sports with his buddies, asks, "You guys need anything?" When someone on TV compares LeBron to Oscar Robertson, Jordan fumes. He rolls his eyes, stretches his neck, frustrated. In quote. It's absolutely, he says, catching himself. The point is, no one is critiquing the personnel that he's playing against. Their knowledge of how to play the game. That's not a fair comparison. That's not right. Could LeBron be successful in our era? Yes. Would he be as successful? No. And ultimately, that's my point. You can't compare other players from previous eras where the game itself was fundamentally different, the rules were different, the sports and conditioning was different. And this is why people like myself say if guys like Dan Marino were playing today, they'd put up 60 touchdowns and 6,000 yards a season average for a career. I think Brady would be great. No, I think Brady would be good in the 80s, but there's no way he would have 7 rings if he played in the 1980s. There's no way. And that's really all I have to say about it. Michael Jordan is Joe Montana. Tom Brady is Tom Brady. And LeBron James is very manufactured. Very manufactured. So I can understand the absolute frustration of Michael Jordan seeing this happen to him and have a moment of clarity. This is why I personally believe, like I said, this is why he made The Last Dance. He wanted to put his say on, here's who I am. Here's all of it. Here's the great, here's the ugly, here's the come up story, here's the obstacles I face. Now, you make the decision as to who's the greatest of all time. He wasn't telling us who's the greatest of all time. That's for us to say. It simply highlights a key difference in the wiring of, when I say the wiring, I'm talking about the mental wiring of these four individuals. Three of them are wired a certain way, and the fourth, LeBron, isn't. When you have to run from adversity instead of standing your ground building yourself up and fighting through that adversity. Montana had several different injuries. It's not that he was brittle. This is the bullshit argument I get into with other uh, football fans. We're like, Montana was injury prone and all this crap. Uh, Drew Brees is shorter than Joe Montana and built very similarly. He had a 19-year career in the NFL. He was drafted in 2000, 2001, 2000, around the same time Brady was drafted. Now, does Drew Brees play like he, as long as he did, like he did, if he played in the 80s? I don't think so. The 80s were very, very physical, both in basketball and in football. So part of the game was about protecting yourself from injuries and being aware of who was around you, who might knock the crap out of you. The idea that, actually, I heard Montana say, to play quarterback in his day, the idea was, okay, can I make the throw to the guy knowing that I'm going to take the hit? Today's quarterback is, can I execute the play to score the touchdown? No, there are two huge gaps. Two huge gaps. One is much less adverse because, yes, while the quarterback can get sacked, and that rule hasn't necessarily changed, they haven't removed you can't hit the quarterback, but they've reduced they've reduced it to where you can hit the quarterback, the amount of force you hit the quarterback with. You can't pancake a quarterback into the ground. That's what ended Joe Montana's tenure as the 49ers quarterback, was Leonard Marshall blindsided sacked him and not only pancaked him, breaking several of his ribs, but if you look at the replay, you're going to notice Leonard Marshall force Joe Montana's right hand into the ground really hard, breaking his finger. And listen, I can't hold it against him. That's the way the game was played back then. But these are things that aren't taken into consideration. And Jordan is pointing that out when he's making the LeBron, when he sees somebody on TV comparing LeBron to Oscar Robinson. There's nuance to this. So I can feel Jordan's frustration and wanting to provide context to this. And because what's going on now is there's so much media coverage on LeBron James that it's completely, we're so saturated with it about how he's the GOAT. He calls himself the GOAT. Coming back 3-1 from the finals against the Golden State Warriors. Well, made him the GOAT. Well, LeBron, you know what would have made that comeback more special? Is if you had stayed in Cleveland that entire time, struggling to get there, struggling to get there, struggling to get there, struggling to get there, and then finally win in 2016. We could appreciate that more. We would appreciate that more. But the way you're wired, you have to say it because you know in your heart you're not the greatest player of all time. I'm going to end this with a quote from the late great Walter Payton. If you're good at something, you'll tell everybody. But if you're great at something, they'll tell you. That's it. That's all. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.